Welcome back. In this video we're going to explore the visual editor, vocabulary editor and process editor in DAAD Builder. We're going to start building a game from scratch by following Utu's official DAAD Ready tutorial for beginners on medium.com. According to chapter 1 of this tutorial, the game is going to be called The Tower. So let's head over to DAAD Builder, click New Project and type in that name. The name that we enter here for the project will be used to generate the file name for the DSF file later on when we download it. And we're going to stick with the language file English here. And we're ready to go. Going back to Utu's tutorial, if we scroll down just a little bit, we see it's very kindly laid out a map for us already. We have 6 rooms on the map, all numbered with the connections between them. But there's a catch. Between location 4, the cell, and location 5, there's an east-west line with a cross through it. Because I've read ahead, I can cheat a little bit here. That cross means it's a one-way connection leading up the stairs from the cell. So let's jump into DAAD Builder and rough out this map. The default template that we've opened has already given us rooms 0 through to 2. So let's rearrange those and then quickly add 4 more. So we go into the room mode here to add new rooms. We want room number 3, room number 4, 5 and 6. Now we have the rooms, we switch to the cursor mode to be able to edit them. Now let's wire them all together. We already have a connection here from the default template, which we don't want, so we'll just delete that. And very simply, the first connections are just an east-west connection between room 1 and room 2. So if we click on east from room 1, we just drag that across to room 2. We have another connection here as well, going from room 2 to room 3. Room 4 is the one which we know is a one-way connection. We can click here and start the drag, so we have an east-west connection. We want this just to go one way from the cell to the staircase. So what we do is we tick the box here, which turns it into a one-way connection. Should we wish that connection to go the other direction, we can click reverse underneath. Now the other connections that we have are slightly different. There are up-down connections between room 3 and 5 and room 5 and 6. By default we just have the compass point directions. What we do is we drag a connection down from south to north, and we do the same again for room 5 to 6. Now if we select the connectors, we can change the direction type. We have on the bottom here in or out or up and down. So you want this to be up and down, and the same again on this one here, up and down. And that's it, as simple as that. We've created our rooms and we've wired them all together. Let's jump back to Utu's tutorial. We've created the rooms in the map, laid them out, and we've made the connections between them. If we scroll down, the next thing he talks about is giving a description to those locations. He also talks about the ability to create labels such as L barracks to refer to them later on. We will see how to do that in a moment. But initially, let's just use the descriptive text. We're going to copy and paste across from here. So if we go into the room editor, and in the room editor we want location number 1. Here we're going to give the description that was in the file by pasting it in. Now if you look back at Utu's tutorial, you'll see that in that description he had the tower, hash sign and an N, which will stand for a new line. but when we go back into the editor in DAAD Builder, it's already shown that as a new line. But what does it look like in the text editor? If we flip back over to the text editor and we jump down to the location section, we will see here it's showing that #n. So it automatically converts if you use a new line in the editors to making that into a #n ready for the compiler later on. Another feature as well, which you probably haven't noticed here, is actually some of the text descriptions in Uto's tutorial use Unicode characters. This is something that the DAAD Ready compiler would choke on later on, as it expects ASCII. But these automatically will convert as you copy and paste across. It will convert any Unicode characters over to ASCII characters for us automatically. So let's just copy across the rest of those descriptions for the other rooms. Okay, so I've copied and pasted across all the descriptions from those rooms. You'll now see them listed down the side next to the room numbers. So what's the next thing on the tutorial? The next part of the tutorial talks about creating labels for those locations to make them a bit more human readable and easier to deal with. Uto uses a very strict labeling format for his defines. In this case here, for locations, it will begin with a lowercase l and then the name of the room. For flags he uses a lowercase f, and we stick to that same convention in DAAD Builder. But how do we create those labels in DAAD Builder? Well, it's really quite simple. If we just select the name of the first room, intro, copy that, and we'll go across to DAAD Builder, and in the first room, the tower, which is our intro, we put that in as the room name. You'll notice on the side the room name has now changed to being intro. If we want to use that as a define for the room, we'll just tick use as define. That will now create a define in the text file ready for us to use in place of that number. Let's flip over to the text editor. The defines are all laid out. Flags come first. If we scroll down, we have values, and then we have our location defines, and there's the first one we just created. Define lintro as 0 for room 0. I'll quickly just name the other rooms from the tutorial. Right, so now we have all of our rooms. Under the rooms, we're now showing the labels we've created. If we go over to the text editor, go down to locations, we now have a define for each of those rooms laid out for us. That will make things a little bit easier later on. Let's go back over to Uto's tutorial and see what his next step is. So if we scroll down from here, he shows the connection section. Well, we've already done that in the visual editor earlier on. His next step after that is testing. So at this point he would now compile this and run it in DAAD Ready and see how the game was running. We don't need to do that. In fact, we will leave the stage of downloading the file and compiling it until the very last video in this series. But what we'll do now is we'll go across to test adventure. This will load our project straight from the working file and let it playtest it internally. Keep in mind this feature is still in very early development. Some places the display, like here, may double up. You may get a few messages which are the wrong messages for that event, and a few other issues, but currently it's good enough for a small adventure like this. At the bottom of the screen we have some quick buttons which have all the compass points that we're likely to use: up and down, inventory, and look. At the top of the screen it will show the exits that are available from that room. So we know from here we can go east, which will take us into the barracks, east again, which takes us to the bottom of the staircase, up takes us to the next staircase, which is where we would have a passageway going to that cell, but it's currently hidden, and up once more takes us to the bedroom. So that's our first basic steps. If we go back to the tutorial now, we'll see what we have to do next to make this game a little bit more fleshed out. So back to the tutorial. Our next step in the tutorial is going to be about the secret passage. Our next step in the tutorial is making a way to open the secret entrance to the cell. Saying here that we need to define a flag, fopen, to use to say whether that entrance is open or closed. We also need to add some logic into process 5 to tell so a player can pull a torch on the wall to open it. But first we're going to need the right vocabulary. We need to add the word pull, and also at the same time we're going to add the word push because that will appear later on. The word torch is already in the vocabulary by default. So we're in our vocabulary editor. We want to filter by verb because we will be adding 2 more verbs. Go across to add word, and we can put in our first one, pull. Now we know we actually want to add a second word. If we just click add, it will add pull to our vocabulary and stop there. If we go add plus, it adds pull and gets ready for us to add another word, in this case push, and we'll add that. Look at the next stage of what we need to do. We've got our vocabulary in place. We're not going to worry yet about defining fpassage open. We'll see how we do that in a moment. So the next stage will be in the process editor, where we'll be adding entries for pull torch, and then we can add the various contacts that are needed to be able to get that to do something. So let's flip back over to DAAD Builder. Right, so now we need to jump into the process editor, and we're going to be working in process 5. This is where generally we work most of the time whilst building an adventure. We want to add a new entry into the process table. We're going to add it right at the top. So the first one here is I for inventory. If we hover on that and just move up slightly, we'll see a plus sign. That'll let us add a new entry above this one. So we'll click plus. Now we have our builder. We know the first thing we want is the verb pull. And then we want our noun torch. Now we need to start adding the various contacts. The first one was at. So if we drop down here, luckily that's at the top of the list, at. Where are we at? We're at the staircase on stairs 2. Now we added the labels earlier and we can use those here now. So we drop down here, we're going to see stairs and stairs 2. Let's click on stairs 2. Now we add a new level of contact. The next thing was to set the flag fpassage open to 0. Click on done and we'll start typing in 0. And that will reduce the list down to all the contacts that contain the word 0. We want the top one. Now we don't have a flag yet called fpassage open. If we click on the little plus button, we can add that. I'm just going to copy and paste this across from the tutorial into there. Now we can add a value of our own on there, or we can leave it to auto assign a value. In this case I'm going to leave it to auto assign a value and just click create. Now we have another contact to add. The next one is to set that flag. So we type in set and come down to set flag, and now if we just highlight over the 0 and start typing fpassage, we'll see the flag we just created, fpassage open. We now want to add a message. There's a few quick buttons down the bottom. One of those is message, so we click message, and we don't actually have a message yet in the database. But if we click the green plus, we can add a message into the game. And again, I'm just going to copy and paste this across from the tutorial. And we click create and use, and it automatically assigns that message for us. The final contact is done. So we'll click on that now. And that's our process complete. If we go back over to the text editor and we jump down to process 5, we'll see at the top of the list pull torch, and that's what we just added in. Back to the process editor. Now we have another process which goes underneath that one, which is the next entry for pull torch. After the passage is open, if we try pulling the torch again, it's going to say we can't do that again. It's a very, very similar list to the previous one. Instead of creating it all again from scratch, we can go on pull torch. When we highlight it, there's a little clone button here. Click on the clone button and it'll create a copy of that entry right beneath the one we're on. If we go on to the second entry, we now want to delete the 0F passage, we want to delete the set passage, and we want to add a different message to that. And again, I'm just going to copy this across, plus for a new message, paste that in, create and use. And as simple as that, we've created two processes in the table. So what about closing the passage? If we go back across to the tutorial, we'll have to scroll past quite a bit where Uto actually explains what all those different contacts do. If you're used to DAAD, we can just skip past this. If this is your first time using DAAD Ready and DAAD Editor, you might actually want to read through these and learn how they work. We'll go down past all the pull torch entries to closing the passage. And here we have two more entries called push torch. Now again, these are very similar to the processes that we just built for pulling the torch. Let's go back over to the editor and see how we would implement these two. Right, so we don't really want to create those right from scratch. Let's go back onto the first one. First one here, if we clone it, we can now add our pull entry. Go on to this first one, the pull torch entry. We'll clone that again. This is going to be our push torch entry. We want the two pull torch entries together, so we'll just drag this one down to go underneath pull torch. And we'll change the verb from pull to push. Now the differences here is 0 needs to be not 0. So let's just start typing in not 0 and we can change that over. We're using the same flag here. We're not setting the flag this time, we're clearing the flag. So if we type in clear, we can now clear the flag. And we're going to get a message when that happens. We don't yet have that message in there, so I'm going to copy and paste that across. Green button to create a message and paste that in. Create and use. And that's it. That's our push torch entry. We now have another one that if we try and push the torch again, it's going to say we can't do that. We'll clone this entry. We want to delete not 0. We want to delete clear. And now we just want to give a message saying I can't do that again. And I'm going to copy and paste that across from the tutorial once more. And that's our process is done. Let's go back to the tutorial. Right, next stage in the tutorial is a bit of code that's saying if we move into the location where we've now opened a passageway to that cell, we want to know that this has happened. We want to see a description about that. This is going to take place in process 3. So let's jump back over to DAAD Builder. And in DAAD Builder, we want to go up on the left hand side to process 3. There's already a process in there. We're going to add a new one in, clicking that at the top. We don't have a verb for this and we don't have a noun for this entry. We have a contact, at, and this is going to be if we're on the staircase. So we want to go to stairs 2. Next we need to add another contact and we want this to be not 0 because we want that flag to have been set to tell us that the passage is open, and we want our F passage flag. So highlight the 0, type FP for start of the F passage, select F passage, open. And now we want a message. Click on message, and once again I'm going to copy and paste this over from the tutorial. Plus sign, paste the message, create and use. And that's done for our process 3. What happens next? Let's go back over to the tutorial again. So if we scroll down now, it tells us what the entry we've just added and what happens. Now we need another entry. Having opened the passage, we still don't have a connection to get into that cell. We need to be able to go west once the flag has been pulled. So this is the next entry we need to add, and again this is going to be in process 5. Let's jump back over to DAAD Builder. And we're going to go into process 5. Underneath the entries we put in, just above or just below push torch, we're going to hover over that and click add entry below. We now need verb of west, W for west. Okay, we need to have our location. Click on done, at is the top one in the list, and we're going to be again at stairs 2. Add a new contact. We need to check if that passage is open. So we're going to check for not 0 on our passage flag. Highlight the 0, FP for passage, F passage open. And now we want to go to the cell if that passage is open and we're allowed to move. New contact, go to. And this is going to move us into the cell. And finally we want to restart. That's another quick button on the bottom. Okay, and that's all wired up now. So the final stages in that page of the tutorial, if we go down, it's about adding the vocabulary which we've already done earlier on in the game. In fact, in our case, we have to add that vocabulary before we can use it in the process builder. So that's it for this chapter. Let's go back over to DAAD Builder and have a look at what we've built so far and test that adventure and see if it's working. So we'll go across to test adventure, and we start off in the first room. We want to go east from there into the barracks, east again to the staircase, up the staircase to the first level, and now there's a torch hanging on the wall. Let's see if we can pull that torch. Pull the torch and it reveals a passage going west. Let's just try pulling the torch again. We can't pull it anymore. We've pulled it, we've opened the passage. If we now try going west, we end up in the cell. So we know that torch is now working and we are now able to travel into the cell. And that wraps it up for this part of the tutorial. In the next video we're going to look at chapter 2, where we'll start diving into how DAAD Builder handles items and objects. So I'll see you in the next video.